Our phone number's in the studio, 543-3693. You can call or text on those lines. Brought to you by our friends at 805 Beer, teaching you how to properly chill. We got Jeff Stulberg here, attorney at law. Practices out of San Luis Obispo. He's your personal injury lawyer, criminal defense. He also does a little general business law and some civil litigation. And today we wanted to do was open up the phones to or the text lines. If you had any questions for Jeff, there's a lot of times that people will call in after you leave, or they'll email, they'll Facebook, they'll text now.
Last week I was just walking out the door to court.
Right, yeah. Somebody called and asked you a question. So we wanted to give people an opportunity if they had any legal questions. Somebody yesterday wanted to know about marijuana laws, and I said, well, I don't think even you can answer marijuana laws right now because coming to the first of the year, they're going to be changing. But, I mean, depending on city council and what city you live in and if they'll have a right to sell marijuana in those places, that's all kind of pending because they're still trying to figure all that stuff out. But if you have any questions legally, if you have questions about, I don't know, if it's traffic tickets up to if you felt like somebody did you wrong, you can give us a call or text at 543-3693.
They can begin it too with something like "I have a friend who."
Do you get that when people call you?
Every now and then.
All right. We'll connect you with Jeff right now, and then, of course, we'll get you his information if he can help you further. What have you been up to lately? Have you got any new interesting things going on in your office?
Well, actually, I wanted to talk to people about a safety issue this morning. Almost everybody at one time or the other in their life has to get a prescription filled at a pharmacy.
Right.
And I urge people when they go to the pharmacy to make certain that they're actually getting the medication that they were prescribed to get, and that if there's something about it that doesn't seem right, to ask the question. And the reason I say that is I've got a client right now. It's a new case, an older man who was getting ready for surgery, and his doctor increased the dosage on his medication that reduces fluid retention. It's actually a diuretic because they were going to do heart surgery on him, and they didn't want him to have extra fluid on his lungs or in his extremities. So the doctor wrote him a prescription to increase his dosage. Well, the doctor's prescription was 1 tablet twice a day.
Okay.
When he got the medication from the pharmacy, the pharmacy directions that they typed on there said 12 tablets a day.
Oh my!
And,
that's a big mistake.
He couldn't figure it out because after just 4 days, the prescription was gone.
Yeah.
Oh
and
my!
And so he went back to the pharmacy, and the idiots at the pharmacy refilled the prescription.
No.
Oh,
And then
I see. Okay, so he went through this entire he did the whole prescription, and then he went back to the pharmacy and they refilled it again under the same prescribed.
Right, and then he went, and then he was feeling badly, and he went to the doctor for his pre-op visit and told the doctor he was really feeling bad, and the doctor asked if he'd been taking the medication. He says, "Yeah, I've been taking the 12 pills a day, just like you told me." The doctor looked at the prescription and realized that it was wrong. And so I've handled over the last 30 years, I would bet that I get at least 1 to 2 pharmacy error cases every year. And if you think about that, that's just one lawyer in the whole state of California with that many cases. And I was looking into it a while back, and every year, 175,000 people die in hospitals from medication errors.
Jeez.
Think about that. Now, if you compound that with all the private or the outside pharmacy errors, and not just cases where somebody dies, but where people are seriously injured. And, pharmacies are supposed to have tracking systems. For example, all the big pharmacies like Rite Aid, Walgreens, the biggies, are supposed to have computer systems in place that if you're taking multiple medications, for example, you have a prescription prescribed by one doctor, and then your neurologist prescribes something else, and your orthopedist prescribes something else. They're supposed to be able to tell before those prescriptions are filled whether there's any known adverse reactions to those medications when taken in combination.
So you don't get a deadly cocktail of drugs.
Right. A few years back, I had a case against a local pharmacy. I won't say which one it was, but this individual was prescribed 3 medications by 3 different doctors, which, if you look at the physician's desk reference or the medical literature, say that these 3 prescriptions, these 3 medicines, when taken exactly as prescribed at the same time, can cause sudden death without any warning. And in this particular case, this man's wife was taking these medications exactly as prescribed, pharmacy hadn't caught it. He wakes up in the middle of the night, his wife's dead in bed next to him.
Oh.
So the takeaway here is, if you've got a question about a medication you're taking, if you go back to refill a medication and the pill doesn't look quite the same, or it's the wrong color, or it's got a different stamp on it, or there's something about the directions for usage that vary greatly from the time before, one, ask the pharmacist. To ask your doctor.
And it's funny because pharmacy or doctors, these are people that we kind of just, we don't know anything about it.
We trust them too.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're so trusting that I do it all the time. I mean, I have medications that I've taken for the last 17 years, and they do make slight adjustments, and when they make the slight adjustment, I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. You guys know what you're doing, and I never really questioned it.
I mean, preventative would be go to your doctor, have your doctor tell you exactly what to do, write it down, pay attention, and that way, if you go to the pharmacist and it's different than what the doctor said, maybe that's where you call your doctor back. You ask some questions so you don't end up in this situation. It's crazy to think that people have died because the pharmacist didn't prescribe the medicine correctly, or there was some kind of communication breakdown between the doctor and the pharmacist.
Right, and I've had cases over the last 30 years that went every different way. For example, completely wrong medicine, right medicine, wrong dosage, right medicine, right dosage, wrong instructions for how often to take it. And then I've had cases, too, where the pharmacy misfilled the prescription because the doctor either made a writographical error or because as many physicians, such as my father, have such bad handwriting. It happens that way. The other thing, you had mentioned, looking at your prescription before you take it to the pharmacy. As you know, most doctors, actually physicians, do use a chemical annotation shorthand for prescriptions, which, number one, tells the pharmacist that more likely that the doctor actually wrote the prescription, and two, that it's in a Latin or type shorthand so that lay people can't just write on it, get a piece of paper from the doctor and write 500 Norco on there and take it in and fill it. So, those are the things to be mindful of. And
it's then a good thing to think about.
And I'll also be sure, and this is just a preventative deal, because if this doesn't work out, you're going to call me, I hope. But when you go to a doctor, any doctor, before they prescribe a medication to you, you should tell them, I am taking these other medications in the following, in these doses this often. Or if you go to a pharmacy and you're getting a new medication, when you pick it up, you should ask, I'm currently taking this and this. Is that a problem in conjunction with this?
Yeah, because we hear about that all the time, especially it seems like with celebrity deaths, that they get prescribed so many different prescription medications, and then they take them all together, and then they end up dead because they overprescribe themselves. Personal injury cases, meaning if you've been in an accident or you've been injured or something has happened to you and it's not right and there should be justice, you give Jeff a call. He can help you out. Also, if you need to sue somebody or if they're suing you, he's a good guy to talk to. And, of course, you deal with a lot of guys that are in trouble with the law too, don't you, Jeff? That maybe made a mistake, and now they hope that you can lessen the punishment for them.
Most of my criminal defense clients are good, hardworking people that have like one really bad day, and they just need to figure out a way to crawl back from that.
We've all make mistakes, and we all have bad days.
You ever represent any growers?
I have.
Danny says he has a friend,
good,
who is a grower. And he was wondering if you could go over any laws in the county on marijuana. And I know this is ever changing on the landscape of things because everything's in limbo right now. But I know that you've been in here before and you've talked about people that grow for their personal usage. Where are the laws on that as of right now?
Okay, so first of all, in this county, it depends on what zip code you're in. God. I mean, really. But let's just talk about the unincorporated area of the county, because there's been a lot of talk about that recently, because the County Board of Supervisors essentially are going to govern that whole area. So it's different, obviously, in Grover Beach than it is in A-Town or Paso Robles or Pismo or Morro Bay. So you just need to be more specific about that. But in general, an individual can, as of January, right now, have six, at least have six or more plants, up to, say different prescriptions say different amounts, but 6 plants for medical use. After January 1st, the rule is going to be 6 plants in the city of San Luis Obispo anyway, and I think the way they're going to treat it in the county is 6 plants per household, regardless of how many people are living in the household, for personal use, if it's just purely recreational. In terms of the growing, right now the discussion among the Board of Supervisors, as I understand it, is they are currently 3-2 in favor of drastically limiting what can be done. And last I heard, it was going to be about 110 people that were going to be, or organizations that were going to be authorized to grow, like 46 indoor and the rest outdoor, and they would have all had to have existing permits to do so at that time. So there's going to be a lot of people that were growing, say, 100 plants because they had a note from their doctor saying you could have up to 199 plants that are not going to be able to do that after this passes. There's going to even be people that were approved medical growers that have been doing it for years that under the new application process won't be able to because they had a prior felony conviction or something.
What does that mean for these the Wild West that is the Carrizo Plains and the bumper crops that have been popping up out there? I mean, are they going to have to come in and shut those down if that's the case?
They're going to say, one of the things that I'd heard was that they were going to ban any kind of commercial cultivation out in the Carrizo Plains area, probably on the theory that it's so remote that it's difficult to police, and 2, that there's a limited amount of groundwater out there. So, but every area is different, and it's going to be a period of huge confusion after the first of the year. One thing I will have to say is that local law enforcement, including the sheriff's department, has taken a realistic view on this, given the confusion, and that and they're not looking to make marijuana arrests. They're not stopping people to see if they can find marijuana in the vehicle. But,
not like they used to.
Right.
It's not going to be full on raids.
In other words, let's just say you were stopped for a traffic citation and the officer saw a pound of marijuana in the back seat of the car, and you said, "I have a medical card, but I don't have or a half pound. I don't have my prescription with me." Most likely, they'd write you a citation, and you could go, and then you'd go to court, and upon proof that you had a valid prescription, the DA would most likely dismiss the charge.
Laws have changed a lot. Jeff Stulberg is here with us. 544-7693 is his phone number.
Where were those laws when we were in high school?
Stulberg Law.
When I was in high school, I had 2 classmates that went driving through Texas and got pulled over, and they had like 2 joints of marijuana, and they both went to prison at hard labor.
Jesus.
So that was, of course, around 1974. 75.
Jeff, Don writes in. He says he wants to know if he has a criminal record in the past, and he would like to get it abolished or cleared up. Can you actually help him with that?
Oh, absolutely. Have him call me, 544-7693. If somebody has a prior misdemeanor record and they've successfully completed their probationary terms and haven't committed any new offenses, I can file a petition with the court under Penal Code Section 1203.4, which, if the judge signs it, causes the prior plea or conviction to be set aside or with the plea to be withdrawn, and then the case to be dismissed in the interest of justice. So this happens all the time with Cal Poly students. They do something dumb during their freshman or sophomore year, and then when they are about to graduate, they need to clean up their records to be able to get out there in the job market. Even some felonies. There's certain felonies, like, for example, rape, attempted murder, armed robbery, that are straight felonies. There's no way that ever gets reduced to a misdemeanor or absent some kind of a pardon or grant of clemency from the governor. But there's certain cases, for example, grand theft, $900 or more. It's called a wobbler, which means it can either be charged as a misdemeanor or a felony. Any felony that's a wobbler, if the defendant successfully completes their probationary period, we can petition the court to reduce the felony to a misdemeanor under Penal Code Section 17B, and then once that motion is granted and it's a misdemeanor, then I can file a petition to have the misdemeanor dismissed pursuant to Penal Code Section 1203.4, and they can actually earn a clean record.
Jeff Stulberg hanging out with us. Jeff and Jeremy here. Our phone numbers are 543-3693. You can call or text your questions in for Jeff there. We have a couple people on the line that wanted to ask you a question. We're asking Jeff anything right now. You can always go to his website, stulberglaw.com, to get his phone number, to give him a call. You take calls, you take questions. You don't charge people for that.
No, I don't give legal advice over the phone. What I'll do is I'll try to establish a rapport with the person and find out whether their problem is something that I believe that I'll be able to help them with. And if I do, then I'll invite them to the office for a consultation one-on-one.
All right, man. What's your question for Jeff?
How does someone get arrested only for resisting arrest?
That's a great question, actually. The charge that he's probably referring to is a misdemeanor called Penal Code Section 148A, which is resist or delay of a peace officer or emergency personnel. And it's a really broad, it doesn't mean that it's a really broad definition. It doesn't mean that you fought with the police officer or struggled, and it doesn't have to be incident to a lawful arrest. For example, let's say some people are loitering, in front of a liquor store, and police come up to inquire what they're doing in front of a liquor store at 11 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning, and the officer comes up and a person starts to walk away, and the officer says, "Stop, I want to talk to you for a minute." And the person keeps walking. The officer says, "Stop, come back, I want to talk to you," and the guy busts out running. Well, that is a violation of Penal Code Section 148A. Another example would be, and this happens not infrequently, a couple of kids will be out drinking and one of their friends will have way too much to drink. And they'll be out in front of one of the local drinking establishments waiting for a taxi or an Uber or the sober driver to pull up. And an officer, one of the bicycle or street officers, walks up to, because that person doesn't look like they're leaning against a building or they're having trouble standing, and engages them.
I'm having flashbacks.
I actually had to help Jeremy out.
And
the first night I ever went to McCarthy.
And while they're trying to do that, some other helpful citizen intervenes and gets between them to say, "Hey, it's okay. You don't need to talk to them. I've got it under control." And the officer says, "Excuse me, I'm talking to them.
Right.
Please step
back." So if they give you a direction, just listen to it, because otherwise you can be arrested for...
That's exactly what went down.
For resist or delay of a peace officer. And again, it's a very broad definition, which is why it's charged as a misdemeanor. And sometimes, those are... they're reduced one way, if somebody's just being a jerk, but because of the circumstances, but there's never any real resisting, we end up either resolving those as well. Sometimes they're offered diversion under the new program. If they have no priors, they get a letter from the district attorney's office prior to the arraignment date saying, if you take this class through Pacific Education Schools, PES, we won't file the charge against you with the court, even though you received the citation. If it goes beyond that, and it's relatively minor, one way that we can resolve those is a plea agreement to disturbing the peace as an infraction. So you're being a jerk in public.
But end of the day,
but it's not a criminal offense.
You should listen. I mean, if a police officer or law enforcement person comes up to you and they need to talk to you, talk to them. You run away from them, then that's how you get arrested for resisting arrest.
Well, you don't necessarily need to talk to them beyond giving them identification. For example, if an officer comes up and says, "Well, where are you going?" It's perfectly fine to ask, "Well, why would you be inquiring?" And if you don't get a satisfactory answer, you can just give me your idea and say, "Well, then I decline to talk to you if you're not going to tell me what this is about."
One time, Jeremy was really drunk, and he was stumbling out in the middle of Higuera, and I grabbed him, and I said, "Okay, come back up off the curb." And the police officer came up to me and asked me, said, "What's going on with your friend here?" Because he didn't seem like he could.
It was my first night at McCarthy's. I'm telling you, it was the old McCarthy's, and it was.
And it's not the car dealership.
Yeah, no. It wasn't their fault. I just.
And I said,
I had a little too much.
I said, "Don't worry about it. I'm going to take him home in a bit here. I'm going to make sure he gets home safe." Should I have not said that?
No. And then he said, "Okay, thank you," and then he went on his way.
No, that's a reasonable explanation. But let's say you're the one that was. You said to Jeremy, "Here, I'm going to leave you leaning up against this building. Be sure not to vomit on your shoes. I'll go get the car." And then you pull up in the car, and two officers are trying to talk to Jeremy, and you get in the middle of them and say, hey, it's okay, I'm here as his ride. And they say, excuse me, sir, we're talking to him right now. And you say, no, really, I'm his ride. I got him, the car's right here.
Force the issue.
You know, and like say you grab his arm and try to Jeremy's arm and try to get him towards the car, that would be a 148.
Okay.
Usually the officer will say, though, if you do not step back, I will arrest you.
Give you a warning. and at that point, Jeremy, you're on your own. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I'm glad that didn't happen.
You're going for a ride. He'll pick you up at the jail.
It was my very first night in town, and everybody thought it'd be funny to take us all to McCarthy's, and Jeremy didn't eat dinner, and Jeremy had too many McCarthy whiskey shots. 544-7693. See, it can happen to anybody, even a dumb DJ.
Good morning.
Jeff and Jeremy in the morning on 93.3 KZOZ.